Hello, welcome to EPG Pashala Spanish. My name is Nabil Ansari and I teach Spanish in the Center of Spanish, Portuguese, Italian and Latin American Studies in Jawaharlal University, New Delhi. We're in the paper entitled Spanish Grammar 1. In this module entitled Corta y pega, you are going to learn how to give simple instructions in Spanish to one or more people with whom we are on familiar terms. How to ask for something we need, motivate or encourage someone to do something, and also to give advice. So more or less in this module, this module is just an introduction to the imperative mode or the command mode, and you will learn it in more detail in Spanish grammar paper 2, that is in Spanish intermediate. So whenever we need to get something done for others, we use the instruction mode to tell them what we want them to do. This mode is called the imperative mode in Spanish. For example, in English we say, John, finish your breakfast. John, finish your breakfast. Or, stop the car, I want to get off. So this finish or stop was were the instructions that were given. Now these are used for various functions. Some of these are used to give command or order to someone or a group of people, and in imperative mode is also used for each giving instructions as to how to do something, or request someone to do something for us, or we suggest a suitable option to that person. Now there are many ways of using imperative. The structure will depend on various situations. So what are these situations on which the structure of the imperative in Spanish will depend? They are whether you are on formal or informal terms with anybody, whether you treat the person as tú or usted, and or whether you are talking to only one person or more than one person. It will also depend whether you are asking someone to do a thing, or whether you are prohibiting anyone to do a thing or asking anyone not to do a thing. So these are the situations on which the use or the structure of the imperative will depend. The form of the imperative also changes according to all 4 of these situations. In this module, we are going to learn to give instructions to one or more people with whom we are on familiar terms. That is, we will only deal with the tú form and the vosotros form of imperative in Spanish. The usted and the ustedes form of giving the instruction, that is the formal form of giving the instruction, will be dealt with in paper number 3 or the Spanish grammar intermediate level. Now let's start with the imperative or the command of tú form. So we'll start with how do we form the command in Spanish in tú form. So for the formation of an imperative, we need to first determine whether the verb is AR ending or ER ending or IR ending. So if the verb is an AR ending verb, then you have already learned the conjugation of these endings like AR ending verb in the previous modules. Now generally the imperative form of any AR ending verb is the conjugation of the same in third person singular form. So third person singular form, by that we mean the él, ella, usted form of the verb. So the él, ella, usted form of the AR verb generally takes a, that is a. So we remove the ending and we add a to the verb. For example, let's see the verb hablar. So hablar in the third person singular was habla, or él, ella, usted habla. Or we can also form the third person singular by removing AR and just adding A to the remaining alphabets. So hablar, we remove AR and add A, becomes habla. Same way trabajar, we remove AR and add A, that is trabaja, and llorar, we did the same thing and it becomes llora. And all these AR ending verbs in the third person singular are same. So if you just to give you an example, let's see the conjugation of hablar. So if the hablar, the conjugation in the present tense is yo hablo, tú hablas, él, ella, usted habla, nosotros hablamos, vosotros habláis, ellos, ellas, ustedes hablan. Same way, él, ella, usted is habla. So this will be the two form of the imperative. So that's in the conjugation of the verb. For example, estudiar. Let's see the conjugation of estudiar. So estudiar was estudio, estudias, estudia, estudiamos, estudiáis, estudian. So in this third person singular was estudia. So this will be the imperative, the two form of imperative in Spanish. So the imperative form of some AR ending regular verbs are given below. So we have the verb on one side and then the imperative form, and then what does it mean. So for example, enviar verb mean to send, but the third person singular of enviar will be envia, that is remove AR and add A, or simply remove the R from the verb. And when we say envia, it means send, that is the command. So envia means to send, but envia means send. Same way, escuchar means to listen, the AR verb escuchar, but when we say escucha, it will mean simply listen. Same way, ayudar is to help, but ayuda means help. Esperar is to wait, but espera is wait. Same way, practicar means to practice, but practica means practice. Buscar is to search, and busca is search, the command. Firmar is to sign, but firma is sign. Regresar is to return, but regresa is return. Cantar is to sing, but if I say canta, it means sing. Cocinar is to cook, but if I say cocina, it is cocinar is to cook, but if I say cocina, it means cook. So I'm giving a command. Same way, contestar is to answer, but if I say contesta, it means answer. So all these imperatives like send, listen, help, wait, etc. that we have seen can be used to give commands or instructions. So by taking just hypothetical first example, send. So if we say send the email, so it will be said as envía el correo, or listen to the song. So we can say escucha la canción, etc. So this was all about AR ending verb. What about ER and IR ending verbs? So what do we do with the verbs, the regular verbs that end in ER and IR for forming the imperative to? So we follow the same rule, that is the third person singular of the verb will be taken as two form of imperative. Third person singular, that is él, ella, usted form. So for example, comer is conjugated as como, comes, come, comemos, coméis, comen. So third person singular is come. So come is the imperative of the verb comer. Same way, escribir, escribo, escribes, escribe, escribimos, escribís, escriben. So third person singular of escribir is escribe. So that is the imperative of the verb escribir. Now let's see some examples using these three verbs, that is hablar, escuchar and comer. For example, when we say habla, it means speak. So if I say speak to your professor, so this can be said as habla con tu profesor. Or if I say study for your exam, which means that I'm giving you instruction to that you should study for your exam. So study for your exam will be estudia para el examen. Or if I say eat fruits and vegetables, so that will be comer frutas y verduras. So if I say study for the exam, it will be estudia para el examen. If I say eat fruits and vegetables, so this can be said as come frutas y verduras. If I use the verb write, that is escribe, so if I say write your phone number here, which means in Spanish it will be said as escribe tu número de teléfono aquí. So speak was habla, study was estudia, eat was come, and write was escribe. Now the imperative form of some er ending regular verbs are given below. As we have seen the imperative two form of er regular ending verbs. Now let's see some er regular ending verbs. Verbs like aprender, so imperative will be aprende, meaning learn. Creer, imperative will be cree, which means believe. Beber, imperative will be bebe, which means drink. Creer, which imperative will be cree, meaning to be, believe. Beber, imperative is bebe, meaning drink. Prometer, imperative is promete, meaning promise. And esconder, the imperative to form will be esconde, meaning hide. Other verbs, irregular verbs like romper, which means to break, but when we say rompe, means break. Same way leer, the imperative to form is lee, meaning read. Correr, the imperative to form is corre, meaning run. Vender, imperative form is vende, meaning sell. And comprender, imperative form is comprende, meaning understand. Now let's see the imperative form of some ir ending regular verbs, which are abrir. So this is ir ending verb abrir. So the imperative to form will be abre, meaning open. Permitir, so the imperative form will be permite, which means allow. Admitir, the imperative form will be admite, meaning admit. Discutir, the imperative form will be discute, meaning discuss. Subir, the imperative form will be sube, meaning climb. Cubrir, the imperative form will be cubre, meaning cover. Partir, the imperative form will be parte, meaning divide. Decidir, the imperative form will be decide, meaning decide. And omitir, the imperative form will be omite, meaning omit. So these are the regular AR, ER and IR ending verbs, imperative and the imperative, especially in two form. Now this is true for all verbs of the three categories except some of them, which are called irregular imperatives. So they mostly pertain to the group of yogo verbs, that is verbs whose first person singular form ends in go. Now they lose their go and thus become imperative except for the verb hacer. So the verbs ending in go in the first person singular form except hacer, for those verbs, in order to make the imperative of those verbs, we simply remove go from that verb and the imperative will be the same what will be remaining. For example, they see in first person singular is digo, so we remove go, so the imperative in two form is di. And as I mentioned, hacer is not, hacer doesn't follow the same rule, so the imperative of hacer is as. But for the remaining other verbs ending in go in the first person singular, for example poner, salir, venir and tener, all of these ends in with go, like poner is pongo, tener is tengo, venir is vengo and salir is salgo. So we just remove the go of all these from all these conjugated forms, and it will be the imperative. For example, poner becomes pon, tener becomes ten, venir becomes ven, and salir becomes sal. Now there is one more irregular imperative, that is ser. Now ser is also irregular imperative. So ser, the imperative two form of ser will be se. Now that is with s, e, and e will have an accent, but you be careful that it is not the first person singular form of the verb saber. Remember that saber is conjugated also as se, the same way, but when we use this se for giving instruction, so this will be the imperative form, and you can understand the difference according to the context. So according to the sentence, you will understand whether this is se of saber or se of the verb ser, imperative form. Now let's see some examples with the use of the above mentioned verbs in imperative form. For example, if we say always tell the truth, so tell is di, so siempre di la verdad. Or do shopping for your grandmother this weekend, so do shopping is haz compras, so haz compras este fin de semana para tu abuela también. Set the table as we are going to eat, so to set the table is poner la mesa, so the imperative of poner is pon. So set the table is pon la mesa porque vamos a comer. Be patient, so to be patient, the verb is tener paciencia, so be patient will be ten paciencia. Come to the university and study with me, so come to the university, in this to come is venir, so the imperative of venir is ven, so come to the university and study with me will be ven a la universidad y estudia conmigo. To go out is salir fuera, so the imperative of salir is sal, so sal fuera. So this was all about the two form of the imperative that we have learned till now. So let's see the vosotros form of imperative, which is the informal plural form of imperative, that is when there are more than one person and you want to give instruction to this group of people, that is when there are more than one person. Now since we address the group directly to one-to-one basis, that's why it is the vosotros form, that is when there are one person in informal it is two form that we have already learned, and now when there are more than one person in informal way of communication, that will be the vosotros form, and we are now going to see how this vosotros form's imperative is formed. So as you know, the two imperative is formed by using the third person singular or the AR, ER and IR ending verbs, but the vosotros form is not formed by taking the third person plural form, so be careful. It is very easy and it is formed in the following way. So the verb, for example, hablar, so the two form was habla, and the imperative in vosotros form will be that we remove the R from the verb and add D, so it becomes the imperative form is hablar. Same way, trabajar becomes trabajar. So all the imperative in vosotros is formed if the verb is an AR ending. For that we just remove the R and add D, so hablar becomes hablar, trabajar becomes trabajar. So as you know that it is formed simply by adding D to the verb. Now ER ending verbs, we remove the stem for these ER ending and we just add ED and thus make the imperative. So comer, we remove this ER and we add ED, that becomes comed, that is com plus ED. Or we simply in another way we say that we remove R and add D, so comer will become comed, which will be the imperative in Vosotros form. So this rule also applies to all the verbs which ends in er. So same way, ir ending verb, we simply remove the r and add d to the verb. For example, escribir in Vosotros form will be escribid. So just to quickly review, ar ending verb, we remove r, that is, for example, hablar becomes hablar, comer, er ending verb becomes comed, and the ir ending verb that we have seen, for example, escribir becomes escribid. Now, as I just mentioned, for any ir ending verb, we simply remove the r and add the d. So escribir becomes escribid. Now there are also few irregular imperatives in Vosotros form. As we have seen in the two form, there are irregular imperatives like poner, tener, ser, etc. In the Vosotros forms of for the imperative, there are also few irregular verbs. So before that, let's see the stop. So for any er and ir ending verbs, simply we remove r of the verb and add d. It becomes the Vosotros form of the imperative. Like we just saw escribir, we remove the d from the verb escribir and add d. It becomes escribid, which will be the Vosotros imperative. Now let's see some of the examples with these imperatives. So for example, if we say Sylvia and Rita, write your address in the form. So there are more than one person and it is the informal way of communication, so we will use Vosotros form of the imperative. So write your address, so write is escribir. So to form the imperative, we remove r of the verb and add d, so it becomes escribir, which means to write. So Silvia y Rita escribid vuestras direcciones en el formulario. Same way, eat fruits and vegetables in order to be healthy. So if there are more than one person and if you want to say eat, so the verb to eat is comer. So the Vosotros form of imperative will be comed, that is, we remove the r and added d. So comed frutas y verduras para estar sano. Or if you want to say to more than one person, speak loudly. So to speak is hablar. So in that verb we just remove the r and add d. So hablad will be the Vosotros form of the imperative of the verb hablar, which will mean speak. So speak loudly will be hablad en voz alta, por favor. Also remember, when we're talking about this Vosotros form of imperative, in Latin America, since the Vosotros form is not at all used, the imperative Vosotros also does not exist. They instead use the usted form of the imperative for formal as well as for informal instruction. So over there they will use usted and ustedes form of the imperative. Now let's see some of the uses of the imperative. So as we mentioned that it is used to give instructions. So it is used in a number of situations where one needs to give instruction to someone to do something. Now some of the situations are given below. One of those situations could be when one goes to the doctor on being sick and the doctor gives advice to what one should do to get better. So there might be various situations where we give instructions. So we are now going to listen to a conversation where a doctor tells the patient what he should do. Now before listening to the conversation, let's see some vocabulary which will help you to understand what is going on in the conversation. So in Spanish, the tablet is known as la pastilla, syrup is known as el jarabe, acidity is known as la acidez, cure is known as so tablet is la pastilla, el jarabe is syrup, la acidez is acidity, el remedio is cure, el chicle is gum, el vinagre is vinegar, la compresa is compress, la consulta is consultation, and there are some verbs like curar, which means to cure, aplicar is to apply, guardar is to keep, and sufrir is to suffer. Now let's listen to the dialogue between the doctor and the patient. Consulta del doctor Sanz, su doctor de cabecera. Doctor de cabecera, family doctor.
Buenos días, doctor. No me encuentro bien. Me duele el estómago.
¿Dónde te duele? ¿Aquí?
No, ahí no, más arriba. Además, creo que me duele el pecho también.
Pues no te preocupes, solo es acidez, nada más. Por eso tienes este dolor en el pecho y en el estómago. Toma estas pastillas contra la acidez 2 veces al día. Si sufres de acidez muy a menudo, puede tomar ciertas precauciones para prevenirla. Sigue una rutina diaria y come más o menos a la misma hora. Haz ejercicios regularmente. Bebe un vaso de agua tibia antes de dormir y después de levantarte a diario. Duerme con una almohada por la noche. La cabeza siempre tiene que estar más alta que el resto del cuerpo. Da un paseo de 10 o 15 minutos después de cenar. Vete a dormir tras 3 o 4 horas de tu última comida. Guarda vinagre de manzana, chicles, caramelo, etc. en casa y echa mano de ellos cuando empieza la acidez.
Gracias, doctor, por haberme dado estos consejos. Usted es muy amable.
After listening to the conversation, now pay attention to the imperative form highlighted in the conversation. You can also see the same in the e-text for its meaning, as well as you can see the conversation in the e-text, that is the transcription of the conversation in the e-text. Now let's see what have you learned in this module. In this module you have learned how to give simple instruction in tú and Vosotros form, and how to advise someone using the imperative mode. If you want to do exercises, if you want to practice, or if you want to also see more examples and more explanations with various situations regarding the use of imperative mode in informal way, then you should refer to the e-text. And also e-text has various links which will take you to other websites also if you want to learn more about the same. Thank you.